Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. And after a difficult season for Temp and the Paris Legion, a clip has surfaced of him talking a fair bit of smack on some of his former team. Does he have a fair point here? Or is this an example of Temp not being the greatest teammate last season that might well affect his stock going into 2023? Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you are new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. It really helps out the channel. Thanks very much indeed for doing that one. Plenty to discuss today. Thought this is pretty funny first of all here from Saints actually, because there has been some questions really about what's going to happen next season with a lot of these teams. Florida Mutineers being one example, because this year aBeZy was sitting there on the bench the entire season. They did briefly try him out, it seems, in the starting team, and it's honestly kind of like a Temp and Paris situation in a way with Awakening in this team, because Awakening wasn't particularly happy with the state of Florida this year. He was saying very recently, right, that he didn't even want to run the SMG, but they were kind of forcing him to for whatever reason. And then aBeZy, when they were subbing aBeZy in for their scrims, when they needed another SMG player because they let Vivid go thinking they were going to get Asim, and they didn't, and even I think they wanted Neptune back or something, but he went, of course, to the Los Angeles Guerrillas. They needed an SMG player, they ended up with 2 real, of course. They tried aBeZy, that didn't work out in scrims, and then aBeZy was tweeting like, oh, wow, I'm that guy or something, and then Awakening was like, no, you're not that guy, mate, to the replies. And apparently that was basically just saying that you were terrible when you scrim with us. So kind of a weird situation there when Awakening didn't really seem to be operating in the best interest, let's just say, of the chemistry of the team, and maybe Saints is indicating that aBeZy might finally get a spot on the roster next season. We'll see what that comes down to. But yeah, Awakening may well just decide to walk away from this roster, because I mean, yeah, his numbers this year were pretty good. We looked, of course, yesterday, as Doug was saying, about players that we think are stat padding or could be stat padding. There were kind of 4 that stood out. Temp, of course, was one of them, which I think makes sense, and we'll talk about that in a second here, because Temp's numbers looked good, but the results, of course, of the team weren't particularly good. You could say a similar thing for the Florida Mutineers, in fairness, but they got the occasional good result, they got the occasional good series victory, but admittedly, it was few and far between. Just wanted to mention this as well, because we talked about this yesterday, right? The fact that there's this Saudi Arabian tournament apparently might well happen if Activision approves it, and Doug is going to double down on this, right? It's kind of an interesting one really for Doug, because yes, he wants to compete, but going out there to collect the Saudi money, like, I don't know if it's really something you want to do right now, especially the way things are going with Saudi Arabian investment into many things in sports and esports right now. But I covered that a bit in some of the moral implications yesterday. But Doug does go on to say, I really hope Activision approves of this tourney. Between being a sub in year 1 of the COD League back on the New York Subliners, with their rules not allowing me to compete, to their, of course, online season, to being gatekept from champs this year, please let us play, he says, right? So he did say he's going to roast the CDL if they don't approve this tourney, which is apparently going on. But yeah, kind of interesting really, because yes, year 1, he wasn't really allowed to compete because he was a substitute on the New York Subliners, and he couldn't play on the team he wanted to play on because you weren't allowed to have 2 players on the 5-man roster back in Modern Warfare from 2 different teams. You could either only play with another substitute from New York Subliners, which I think would have been Happy or like Opsudo or whatever he went as at the time, or Doug would have to join another team which I didn't have any substitutes on, and pretty much I think he wanted to play with Goonjar, but Goonjar was like the optic sub, so he couldn't play. They eventually changed those rules, and then of course the online season wasn't great, and then this year he says he's being gatekept from champs, which isn't necessarily true, right? The format still allowed him to qualify, but you know, being maybe a top 4, top 6 team in the North American Challenger side, Doug's squad, like they arguably should have been able to go to champs, but that's not the format the CDL decided to go with. And even Temp says in the replies, we out to Saudi, Doug, so maybe Temp's getting involved as well, and maybe, because I don't exactly know what Doug was saying with this tournament, but he was kind of implying that all the best teams are going to get invited, and I was wondering, like, does that include Pro League teams as well? And now Temp is saying, like, potentially he was going to get invited to this one as well, like, you know, maybe probably not the entire Paris squad. I'm actually he's going to get a pickup squad or something, as probably doesn't want to play with the Paris team again, Temp, but we'll see that here in a second. Now, of course, the idea of a Saudi Arabian tournament has got a lot of coverage, and even, well, Final Cut Halo here, which is actually Ben J. Asim, says the following: this is a fair take, and considering Activision is generally risk averse, I'd be surprised if it got approved, right? So, of course, he's got experience, well, working with Esports Engine, knowing how Activision operates. He doesn't reckon it's going to get approved, so we'll see what they decide to do here over the coming days. Let's talk about this then. Berlin Hardpoint's top 5 players going into the World Championship, of course. All of these players, apart from Neptune, are going to be there at the World Championship. Of course, look, we've got some usual suspects here. Methods with a 1.27 on Berlin Hardpoints, Cell with a 1.23, Dashy here as well, and then Neptune, surprisingly, really, I suppose it's kind of surprising given the fact that, in fairness, when he was on LAG, they played this map a lot and were very good at it, right? But I'm guessing Neptune, like, surely he got ultra-fried on this map when he was on Subliners right at the start of the season, but probably only for a few games over there. And then Pred as an SMG is here as well, which I thought was very impressive. Also, given the fact that he played this entire year and Neptune was only here kind of, well, right at the start and right to the ends. But speaking of Pred, Temp's kind of referring to Pred as a, you know, top 3 MVP type caliber player when he was talking on stream to Sib, one of course, the Settle Surges players and Pred's teammate at the present time. There was a clip that came out on stream, right, and everyone everyone's been talking, okay, free Donny Temp, it's been a difficult season for them. They finished the year on a 13 loss streak. I believe that's the new CDL record for losses in a row. 2 in 23 overall records. And yeah, Temp's kind of been struggling, setting it on the Paris Legion for quite some time at this point. But the clip came out when he was talking about his teammates. I'm not going to pretend I know that much about the NBA references he's throwing around here, but he's basically saying that his teammates were, you know, bottom 3 MVP caliber players. Like, well, Sim had Pred on his team, a top 3 MVP caliber player, and his team was playing like Grayson Allen.
You have an MVP.
Go look at the data.
Wait, you have a top 3 MVP candidate on your team.
So?
I have a bottom 3 MVP candidate on my team. The f you mean so?
Say that teammate too.
I went from Steph Curry. Look, you got Steph Curry on your team. I got. Let me think, bro. I literally can't even think, bro.
No.
I got no. Don't disrespect Tony, bro. I got. What's that guy on the? Gary Allen, bro. Grayson Allen, bro. Grayson Allen, like, he could hoop in spurts, bro.
So this did start to become a pretty key storyline as the season progressed, that Temp was getting visibly more and more frustrated. Like, this clip came out that was actually on stream, right? I think maybe they lost to round 11 or something happened here where Paris had a position to win, they lost, and then Temp's obviously, like, incredibly frustrated. And you could even hear sometimes, like, they go to a listen-in, like, and someone would be saying something and Temp would be like, no, calm down, like, you know, we've got to do this, that, and the other. Which is like, I get Temp's frustration. He knew he was the best player, like, most individually talented player on that roster, and of course the team was not delivering the goods, and he got, you know, more and more frustrated as the season progressed. Then again, I wonder if this will kind of, well, come back, questions will be raised about this from Temp, right? Because at the end of the day, yes, his numbers were great this year. People like Doug would probably say that Temp was artificially inflating his numbers to a degree just to look better for next season, to try and get on a better team. And it might work out, right? It might not just work out because he inflated his numbers to a certain degree, but just because he was the best player on that team in general and could have done more damage on a better roster. But talking about your old teammates like this doesn't necessarily paint the greatest picture of you as a teammate necessarily. Like, I just wanted to look at the numbers here real quick if you guys are unfamiliar with them. The 1.10 for Temp in the hardpoint, 0.96 in search, 1.08 in control, same with gravity actually. And just kind of comparing it to this because all his other teammates were negative in every mode apart from gravity here. This is comparing everything here up top, and then if we compare it to the other players, Fellow, Decimate and John, they also had a really tough time this season, right? So everyone got fried on Paris Legion pretty much apart from Temp, who actually had a 1.08 for the entire season, something like the 6th or 7th highest KD in the entire game. So pretty impressive that Temp was able to put up those numbers, but I'm sure his teammates would say, well, look, Temp wasn't really trying to win, because Temp knew the season was chalked, which is, you know, to a degree it's fair enough. When it got to the point where they were not winning anything and there really wasn't anything to play for anymore because Champ's qualification was over, then you can understand Temp's frustrations, right? But now he's coming out and saying that, I'm guessing he was talking about Jimbo there, maybe was the bottom 3 MVP caliber player, because Jimbo definitely had pretty much the worst stats in the league from a few metrics, apart from, like, I guess 2 real, but Jimbo was in the league a bit longer. But I feel like Jimbo gets harshly treated there, really, because he had like a 0.79 KD online, but on LAN he had like a 0.98 or something. Like, it was really respectable KD on LAN. And the thing is that Jimbo was playing for Montreal, I believe, as like an entry SMG on a terrible ping against the best teams in the game online. Like, that's not a recipe for success. So I feel like Jimbo got kind of harshly treated this season. But what do you guys think about Temp's statements here, right? Do you think he has a point to be frustrated about the caliber of teammates he had, which I think is probably fair enough, because Temp knows this might be either his best COD ever or his second best COD ever to Black Ops 4 maybe. I don't really know what Temp thinks is his best COD, but it's probably up there, like this game, his ability on this game, top 3, top 4 of his kind of performances of all time, he believes, in terms of his ceiling. And you can understand the frustrations of being like, well, I didn't have the team to actually show what I can do on this game. At the same time, it did feel like towards the end of the tenure that he wasn't necessarily being the best teammate, right? Getting frustrated in listen-ins, not exactly building the rest of the team up, right? To actually put themselves in a position where they could have any success. And in fairness, it's not like Temp's had much success the last few years, really. I mean, yes, they won the New York Home Series back in Modern Warfare. Like, I think he made the grand finals of, was it Fort Worth on Splice back in Black Ops 4 in 2019. But since the CDL era has happened, really, on New York Sublanders, they were a decent team in the middle half of last year. Then, of course, last season he was on Los Angeles Seas. That didn't go too well. They dropped him, and then it goes on to Paris Legion since then, and it's been an absolute disaster class the last couple of years. So will Temp's performances this season get him another spot back on a good team, or could they potentially hold him back? Because I did put this together kind of recently, right? A kind of roster concept here for Boston Breach, what they might decide to do if they, you know, they'll probably keep methods, but if they want to trade out their flex player in TJ, they might well go for a guy like Temp. There are other options as well. There's guys like Awakening, even, you know, Scrappy, depending on what role he exactly wants to run. So it's an interesting one. I feel like this team could be good, could work out rather well, and I feel like Temp should and probably does deserve an upgrade in terms of the teams that he's been on. Free Temp has been a thing for many months at this point, but, you know, could these ideas really with Temp maybe not seeming like the best teammate the last few months, talking trash on his teammates, like hold some some GMs and coaches back from saying, look, do we really want to go for Temp here? Or is there an option that's kind of less risky, right? Because Temp hasn't really had the success on a team level, at least for the last couple of seasons. So maybe some of the top organizations that might consider Temp will decide maybe not to do that. But I still feel like an organization like Boston in that kind of middle of the pack situation might well be a team that gives Temp a go. But it definitely intrigued your thoughts on that one. Will it affect his kind of perception of Temp going into next season within coaches, GMs? Or will the players be like, well, look, Temp's talented. If we want to actually try and win something, we've got to have some talent on our roster, because you can't win events nowadays without pretty much stacking your roster full of talent. And, you know, let's get him into the team regardless. Another team, I suppose, that could consider Temp, depending on what they decide to do, could be Los Angeles Guerrillas. I mean, it's a really interesting season they had, because they somehow managed to win, of course, back in Major 2 in that Cinderella story run. Slasher was a monster in Search and Destroy in Major 4, but it didn't work out. They even won. Like, they went 3-4 in Major 4, which isn't really terrible, but it just turned out that everyone around them, especially New York, had such a monster run that this wasn't enough for them to actually win anything, and they just fall shy of World Championship qualification. I think they've really got to think about what they do next year, what they do for their SMG line, like who their flex is, because probably Gunless isn't going to be there anymore, and maybe neither is Spart, but who knows who they build around. But I would keep one, maybe two of these players maximum, and maybe just ask Slasher what he wants to do, to be honest, because I feel like losing Slasher would be a loss to the winning potential of this team. This also from Crimsix, just to mention real quick, how did I make it in the All-Stars? Hicks's Pine Park business must be booming. It's like, well, it doesn't seem like the All-Stars has actually been announced yet, right? And Crimsix kind of joking about it, right? I was making a joke. Obviously, I didn't make the All-Stars. Don't tell anyone that, right? I think the voting maybe just came to an end. We're going to see the All-Star announcement probably rather soon. And I'm guessing the All-Star event is going to happen sometime shortly after the World Championship. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Just wanted to give a shout out to FaZe real quick, because they've been killing the content game the last few days as well on their YouTube channel. But hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new as always. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.
Why is PD asking me to ask you to say squirrel, Paco?
Squirrel.
That's good. That's good.
Done.
Squirrel.
Squirrel.
There you go. Yo, peace, boy, thanks for